Welcome to the GreenPill Network podcast. You are listening to a housekeeping episode in which I wanted to introduce you all to season 4 of the GreenPill podcast. So, this season is going to be about lean, mean capital allocation machines. Capital allocation is the process of deciding how to spend or invest financial resources. With Web3, I think we can maximize not just financial resources, but achieve impact equals profit. We can achieve ecosystem growth. We can achieve public goods funding and possibly even achieve protopia. So basically, the idea here is how do we build crypto economic systems that precisely allocate capital at scale? What are the coolest experiments? This is what we're going to be covering in GreenPill Season 4, Lean Mean Capital Allocation Machines. So basically, I want to circle around the design space of how do we allocate capital. Capital allocation, I think, is a very simple concept at heart, but it also has like this rich periphery of things that can be built on top of it. Capital allocation is basically just deciding how to distribute resources or funding. So at its most simple, it's things like paying bills, paying taxes, repaying friends for a meal. So those are the single player use cases of capital allocation. But I think that at its most advanced, capital allocation can be not just a task for individuals, but a full-time job for many. So arguably, governments are about funding public goods. Grant-making organizations spend vast amounts of time and money figuring out the process, logistics, and decision-making in allocating capital. And the thesis that I've got below this season is that capital allocation is broken in the old world. At scale, capital allocation becomes mirrored in gatekeeping, political decision making, and lack of transparency and accountability. Ethereum and smart contracts present really huge advantages towards allocating capital in an efficient, effective, transparent, incredibly neutral manner. So basically, how do we go from the gatekeeping, not scalable, and not precise capital allocation of the old world? Think about an NGO that spends 50% of its budget on administrative overhead, or a government that has a huge administrative bloat. How do we go from gatekeeping, not scalable, and not precise capital allocation to democratic, transparent, accessible, powerful, evolutionary capital allocation? How do we push power to the edges with respect to how ecosystems allocate capital? And sort of what I see is that the Ethereum community embodies this potential. Some of the lean, mean capital allocation machines being built on top of the EVM are quadratic funding, what Gitcoin's known for, retroactive public goods funding as built on optimism. I'm really a big fan of hypercerts, of conviction voting, and the other capital allocation mechanisms that are being built in the Ethereum community. So it is my goal during this season to go broad and take a look at all the different experiments in capital allocation that are happening in the Ethereum community. And I think that as more and more assets move on chain and the EVM starts to eat all different types of assets, then on-chain capital allocation will become a super huge category one day. Billions, maybe trillions of dollars of capital will be moved on chain via capital allocation systems. So 15 to 20 episodes featuring leading thinkers and innovators who are building on-chain capital allocation tools. And my hope is that GreenPill Season 4 will be a body of work that showcases the present state of on-chain capital allocation, but also the potential for the next market cycle about how EVM-based ecosystems allocate capital. And hopefully we reach an escape velocity where this cycle, a bunch of DAOs are allocating capital to their public goods and to their ecosystems. But what would it look like as the UX naturally gets better of blockchain-based systems and more assets get tokenized to reach an escape velocity where we've got townships and governments and NGOs allocating capital using tech that is pioneered in the Ethereum ecosystem? So some of the themes and things that we are hoping to pull into this season, I'll just rattle off a couple things. And no promises that we'll get everyone that's on this list, but hoping to invite people who are allocating to art on chain into this ecosystem, hoping to have optimism back and talk about retro PGF4, hoping to talk about RevNets, hoping to talk about how we can fund Sybil resistance ecosystems. What are the Sybil resistant ways of doing capital? We'll be doing an exploration of the most recent developments in the Gitcoin ecosystem. For those of you who follow me on Twitter, you know that we just announced Gitcoin 2.0. So we'll be having the Gitcoin Rainbow paper and Gitcoin white paper authors on to talk about Gitcoin 2.0. We will be talking about conviction voting. We will be talking about economic commons. We will be talking more about impact tracking. We'll be talking about streaming capital allocation systems. We'll be talking about some pilots that are being done in the continent of Africa in capital allocation. We'll be talking about people who are taking on-chain capital allocation and making it comprehensible to members of the real world, people who only care about fiat currencies, don't care about all this blockchain stuff. We'll be talking about impact markets. We will be talking about the bleeding edge of Web3 grants. We will be talking about alt layer ones. What are they doing in their grant-based ecosystems? We'll be talking about local currencies. We will be talking to Regen Learnings, the data guild that is doing analysis of capital allocation across the Web3 ecosystem. I plan to talk to Grant Ships, which is an experiment in creating an evolutionary and competitive ecosystem where different capital allocators can compete for the business of different DAOs. I think that's a sort of fun meta episode that we're going to be doing. I hope to talk to Hypercerts. I hope to talk to Griff Green and Giveth and see what they're up to. I want to talk about private capital allocation, the design space pioneered by Clearfund and Macy. I want to talk to Brian Flynn from Boost. I plan to talk about gift circles, how NounsDAO is allocating capital. And then we'll talk about how we could emergently allocate capital on our Web3 social networks. So no promises, but those are the things, those are the people and topics that I plan to cover in GreenPill Season 4, lean mean capital allocation machines. And just to restate the hypothesis there, as more assets get tokenized, on-chain capital allocation is going to become a huge category. What are the new innovative ways that we can allocate capital in a democratic, transparent, and effective way? How can we allocate capital at scale in a precise way using the power of smart contracts and EVMs that was never possible before? So this is a total nerd snipe season for me to take a broad look at how the EVM ecosystem is allocating capital to fund what matters to them. And it's going to be fun to bring you all along for the ride. So season 4, GreenPill, lean mean capital allocation machines starts now. I will see you on the Ethernet. Peace.